I'll say, all right, Jen, introduce us to the topic.
Just say our names.
Yeah, just what you like, passions, hobbies, interests. You know, a little bit about yourself.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bloody. I enjoy skydiving and walks on the beach.
Guys, we're going to have a good show here. We're going to start at about 30 seconds on the I Love Seville show. Thanks to Jen, who you're about to meet on the show, for setting up the round table. We're very, very grateful. She is the better 7/8 of Paul,
Yes.
who was on the show. Was it
Yes.
last week?
Last week.
Yeah, last week.
Yep.
So thank you also to Paul, who did a tremendous job on this show as well. We'll talk Mountain View Elementary and a topic that I think is very prevalent in the news cycle, perhaps the displacement of the 5th grade class from the elementary school to Walton Middle School. So if this is a topic that means a lot to you, please offer some perspective in the comments section. We are live streaming to every social media platform known to mankind, including our guests' Facebook pages. So if you're a friend of Travis or Letty or Jen, you want to thank them, you want to give them props for leading the charge, put it in the feed, and I will relay it on air. I don't think anyone on the round table is opposed to challenging questions. They just need to be respectful and golden rule oriented, please. CBS 19, hello. NBC 29, hello. You got the news watching you guys on the show, guys. We'll have a good time, guys, and we're going to also inform you on a topic that I think really could matter to just about every parent in this area. I mean, if this can happen at Mountain View, it can happen anywhere. J-Dubs, how you feeling? Should we get rocking and rolling? Yeah. All right, we're in your hands, sir. Good Thursday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love Seville show. Thank you kindly for joining us on a gorgeous Thursday in Central Virginia. Of course, we're live in Charlottesville, across Albemarle County, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world, on the I Love Seville network. Dr. Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Integrated Medicine, a proud presenting sponsor of this program. Dr. Wagner and his staff truly have your back. And folks, the best internet in Charlottesville by far is Ting Fiber Internet. We utilize Ting on this network, and it's crazy fast and crazy good. All right, so the next hour, we're going to bring you a topic that I think is going to hit close to home, literally and figuratively, for many parents in Central Virginia. I will let Jen, who you'll meet here in a matter of moments, set the table before we do a deep dive. Judah Wickhauer, you are the director, our North Star, in a lot of ways, our moral compass as well, my friend. If you could go to the studio camera first, and then let's go straight to Hollywood Squares, and we'll introduce you to our guests. First, we will start with Jen. How about an introduction to you for everyone that is watching?
Yeah, hi, my name is Jen McCarter. I am a social worker involved in the community here in Charlottesville. I volunteered at Mountain View Elementary for the past 4 years with the PTO, and I have a rising 5th grader and a rising 3rd grader in the fall.
Fantastic. Letty, your time.
Hi, I'm Letty Prez. I'm a local veterinarian here in Charlottesville, Virginia at Old Dominion Animal Hospital. Quick plug.
I like it.
I have a current 5th grader who is at Walton, and then another son that will be a 5th grader this fall.
She's a lot of perspective on this subject. Travis.
Travis Boyd. I work at the School of Nursing here at UVA, double on the side as a part-time doctoral student in the School of Education at UVA, and I've got a rising 4th grader and soon-to-be kindergartner.
Man, 2 kids, full-time job, and a doctorate student. Good Lord, Travis, you're killing it right now. All right, so I will get out of the way. Jen, set the stage here for us.
Yeah, so, I think this past year, this current year, everyone was super flexible. I mean, we all were just happy for our kids to go back to school. I mean, I think Paul said it probably last week, we would have driven our kids to Ruckersville if they could have gone to in-person school. So everyone was very understanding and willing willing to compromise. Our assumption being that the fifth graders would return to Mountain View in the coming school year. They had been at Walton this current year 2 days per week. And then when we went to register our children for the EDEP after-school program, we weren't able to register the fifth graders. And we found out at that point in time that the plan that the county was working on was to send the fifth graders back to Walton in the fall, full-time, 5 days a week. And so that's kind of how we ended up in this spot talking about this.
So, Letty, we'll get you in the mix. Paul, your husband is watching. Thank you for sharing the feed. Johnny Ornalis, who I believe his better half is a teacher in Central Virginia, just shared the show. So you have a fifth grader currently at Walton, a rising fifth grader waiting in the wing. Is your oldest at Walton 2 days a week?
Yes.
Okay. And can you put in perspective his or her experience at Walton?
So I'll first say that his teacher is fantastic. She's been a very positive influence. However, this change was just thrust upon us. We had no warning, and the very first day he went to school, essentially it was 9, he got home at 5. And that's for he's 11, he's an 11-year-old, a very long day. And I think although the teacher's been awesome, there was such a sense of isolation of the fifth graders at that school and a lack of resources for kids that age that it's had a detrimental effect to both his social experience, emotional growth, and development.
Travis, thoughts on the topic before we take a deep dive?
I am removed from it, certainly, in having younger children. But certainly when this came up and really came across my purview, it was something that I felt like it's coming to a theater near me sometime soon, and I need to get involved on the front end at this point in time in trying to, have an impact before, I get thrust into it in a bad way with my children.
Well said. So some numbers, 115 in the fifth grade class, roughly. Mountain View, the second most populous, second most attended elementary school in Albemarle County. I believe Brownsville is 1. Walton Middle School is significantly under student. It's the middle school in the area that has the most room to add students to the school. So the thinking was, let's try to solve a pinch of overcrowding by bringing the fifth grade out of Mountain View and to Walton. However, the potential collateral damage of this move is
the social impact and the well-being on our fifth grade students. I mean, these students have already had a very traumatic and tumultuous year this year. And to then tell these students, well, you're not going to go back to the school that you love, you're going to start middle school a year early, because that's essentially what it is. They're not finishing elementary school, they're starting middle school a year early.
Stephanie Rhodes, welcome to the broadcast. Your daughter would love this conversation. She's a teacher. All right, so that's one point I wanted to emphasize. So for the last 14 or 15 months, I think we can make an argument that perhaps students may be a tad behind from a social interaction standpoint. They have not been interacting with their peers. 100%. Okay, so 100%. So the fear is if you take 115 kids who have not been around their peers for close to a year and a half, that then thrusting them into a middle school is going to further expedite this crisis. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so give me the perspective as a mom who has a son that's doing it twice a week, and why you're concerned about your youngest then doing it 5 days a week.
So I've seen the struggle at 2 days a week. So what hasn't been mentioned is that when my oldest was sent to Walton, he then was adapted to a middle school hourly schedule. So the day is much, much longer, which is very tiring. He comes home exhausted every day. Now that's only 2 days a week, and then you expect my then to be 10-year-old son to do that 5 days a week, which involves me transporting him about half the time just due to our schedule. it's just going to be especially draining, and they're just not emotionally prepared for a day that long, or academically prepared. So they're going 2 days a week, and now you want them to go that long, 5 days a week, and also be surrounded by kids. Like, my youngest is small for his age, so kids that are 2-3 times as big as him. And that school just, they said they donated 100 books to the library. That's great, but where's the playground? Like, these kids need the physical movement that Walton cannot provide.
Katie Pearl, we will get to your question. Jamie Waller and Taryn Art, welcome to the broadcast. Katie, I'm going to ask Travis a question, then we'll get to your question. Welcome both newspapers to the broadcast. They're watching you here. Travis, your kid's a little further removed here, but still, like everything in your life, you seem to be very active and engaged and organized. I just want to say that. I don't even know you, but I get that impression. What makes you most nervous about this for the parents involved? Because you could be in their shoes down the road.
Yeah. The thing that makes me most nervous is that we're sitting here today. The fact that this got thrust on all of us, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, in late May. We're trying to come out of a pandemic and been dealing with all sorts of transition issues. And this has been a known issue for years before now.
Absolutely.
And so to then say, kind of on the fly, this is the only option we could come up with. I really question, the type of planning and strategy that went into trying to make sure that there was the best possible situation that our kids were being put into. And, I have some legitimate concerns about that, not just right now for these rising fifth graders, but what does that look like in successive years?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, too, to kind of piggyback off what you said is, why was this a conversation we weren't having in January of this year? I mean, granted, with the pandemic, things have been moving crazy fast, and I understand that. But why wasn't there, from the school board, a discussion in January of this year or earlier to say, these are the options we're exploring. What do you all think about them?
That seems reasonable.
Here's plan A, here's plan B, here's plan C. Our last ditch resort is to send the fifth graders to Walton.
Throw this to you. Albemarle County, notoriously poor at planning. And a perfect example of this, Monticello High School, on its day one of opening Monticello High School, they planned that so poorly that they were overcrowded on day one of the high school and needed they call it educational trailers? Is that
Learning cottages,
yeah, learning colleges, but they're trailers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So on day one of a brand new school, they needed learning cottages to accommodate an overcrowding problem.
Well, and the same at Mountain View. I mean, they built an extension, a second floor for the fifth graders, I don't know how many years ago, and they were overcrowded as soon as that E-Pod got built and had learning cottages in the bus loop.
So learning cottages in general, could that be a preferred solution to this as opposed
Yes.
to Walton? Thoughts on the learning cottages?
Yeah, so my sons, when they were at Red Hill Elementary, they had a similar overcrowding issue, and they used trailers, and the kids loved it. And at the meeting 2 weeks ago with the board, that was presented by parents as an option, again, with using the bus loop, which apparently, from what they shared with us, was never really approached by the board. So basically, the parents shot out of a lot of ideas, including these learning cottages, and they just didn't seem to want to even entertain them.
And I grew up in Florida. Every school in Florida has learning cottages. I taught at a high school in Florida that we only had learning cottages. So it's not, like you said, they're nice. They're good private spaces. They usually have their own bathroom. It's a nice compromise, I feel.
Well, why not even consider it? Why? I mean, one reason I was told why the learning cottages were not considered was A, it would take too much time between the classes to go from class to class to class at a learning cottage if they have to go to the main building. The second reason I heard was the sightline reasoning. Can you guys offer perspective on both of those?
Yeah, so I think that was in relation to putting them at the back of the school, that they were, concerned if a student was working or walking from the cottage into the building or vice versa, that no one would be able to kind of see them. But the flip side of that is, your parents are returning to work, and so it's okay for a fifth grader to get themselves to and from the bus in the morning, but they can't walk on an elementary school campus 5 minutes from their classroom into the building. That doesn't make sense to me.
We'll get to comments from the feed. One of the moms that I know from college is watching. Her name is Emily Feed, and she has this comment. Context for anyone listening: Mountain View would be the only school in the county sending fifth graders to a middle school next year, and they would be the only group of kids their age in the district deprived of their final year of elementary school, a decision which was sprung on them last minute after a year plus of uncertainty and disruption. She says a last minute scramble is not beneficial for children or parents emerging from a traumatic experience, COVID and this pandemic. Sharon Fix has this comment. They are also losing a significant portion of their childhood playtime. Their peers and siblings all around the county will be home before 3 p.m. and some of these kids won't get home till after 5 p.m. at 10 years of age. This is absolutely crazy, she says. I'll throw this to you guys because this is coming in via LinkedIn. Folks are saying, did you guys know that this was a designated growth area in the urban ring and density was expected around Avon Extended? How about that topic? You want to start with that?
I mean, for as long as we moved into Redfields in 2015, and at that point, for our family, I mean, number one, we looked into houses in school districts where we were comfortable sending our children. Mountain View was at the top of that list. But we had a recognition at that point in time that there was a possibility that we could be redistricted with the number of students that were at the school. What I would counter that with is look at all the neighborhoods that have been built in the past few years within that school district where there was already overcrowding. What was the thought process that went into, hey, there might be a problem here as all of these neighborhoods are being built. There are more kids that we can expect to eventually be coming into the school system as a result. And what are we going to do about it? So where was the action?
Yeah, where was the pushback from the school board to the board of supervisors to say, hey, we need a minute to catch our breath and build a new school or expand our school or utilize the land that we own off Mill Creek to build something to accommodate all these new neighborhoods?
What do you think of that topic? Because you are in a designated growth area.
Yes, so I think, like you mentioned, it's very logical to assume that this will happen and redistricting will happen. I also live in Redfields, and one of the main reasons I picked this area was for the schools. I moved from North Garden, where my children would have been slated to go to Walton, and I didn't want that to happen. I think the issue is on 5th Street alone, they're building 2 new apartment complexes.
And same on Avon.
There just seems no forethought, and that was brought up. Was it Paul that brought it up yesterday at the meeting? Like, they brought this upon themselves, and now they're choosing to make our children be guinea pigs, essentially. And I think going back to your comment about and your concern, this to me just seems like an experiment, that this could potentially happen, especially in Crozet, where they're very overcrowded. They have cottages that they're using, but it seems that our children are just being used as guinea pigs.
So do we think this is the beta test? This is a beta test for what could scale out across Albemarle. Thoughts?
I think it could definitely be it went well this coming year, so we're just going to keep the 5th graders at Walton permanently.
One of the troubles I think there is not all of the students in this district are slated to move out of Mountain View and go to Walton. That's half of them. The other half, like Redfields, we're supposed to go to Burnley the year after. So what we're talking about is tough. A 1-year stopover to Walton.
Coming out of COVID.
Exactly.
Yeah, so he's basically saying the ones, and I used to live in Redfields off Rockledge Drive. I love Redfields. It's a phenomenal neighborhood. You're basically saying that the 5th graders would go out of COVID, where they've been at home basically, to 1 year at Walton, And then then middle school, because after that is traditionally middle school, at a completely different school.
Exactly.
And that's what my oldest is doing. He'll have gone to 3 different schools in less than 2 years.
And how's he handling that?
Not the best.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad talking about his anxiety on air, but he's an anxious kid by nature, and then you force all these changes. It's to your comment about the kids coming home at 5 or the online comment, it's true. He comes home, he's exhausted, he doesn't want to play, whereas his younger brother, who gets home at 2:30, has been playing in the streets for 2 hours.
And then they miss out on sports because, sports practices are typically like between 5:30 and 7:30. So, if they're in an elementary school schedule, they get home, if they ride the bus, say by 3, and they have downtime to have a snack and relax and whatever, and then go to sports. But if they're not getting home until 5 or 5:30, and they have to be at soccer or t-ball or whatever at 5:30 or 6, like when do they get that time to kind of relax?
To decompress.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is the true issue here? Or is it multiple issues? And I'll throw this to you first, Travis. Is it A, bad communication by the school board and county leadership? Is it B, approving housing development without having infrastructure in place to accommodate said development? Or is it C, trying to beta test kids when you shouldn't be beta testing children in the first place, especially coming out of a pandemic when we're uncertain of, anxiety, state of mind, maturation levels, whether or not they're truly on curriculum?
Yeah, I think that everything you're talking about there are real issues. For sure. So it's all the above, but the fact is, we are where we are at this point, and it's where do we go from here? And I think, that's why we sit here today. We want to be involved with those decisions going forward on what this looks like for the good of our children.
Paul, your husband, is watching. He says, since it is a designated growth area by the county, citizens should be able to expect their elected officials have a plan for those designated growth areas. Well said, Paul. How about this question from Katie Pearl? Why is it that Walton has so many openings if the second largest elementary school is funneling students when they get to 6th grade at Walton? Walton is significantly underpopulated.
And I don't know the 100%. I would guess part of that, though, is because half the kids from Mountain View get funneled to Burley.
Okay.
So then there's only, say 50% of the population or whatever the percentage is going to Walton.
Tough question for you. Toughest one I'm going to ask.
Bring it.
Okay. You said you moved from North Garden to Redfields to avoid Walton.
Oh, dear God.
Why?
So the elementary school that we were at prior was Red Hill Elementary School, which we loved. It was tiny. It was awesome. And I had just, from previous students and previous families whose children had attended Walton, I had just not heard many good reviews. And statistically, and you may be able to better quote me than this, at Walton there was just a higher rate of bullying and misconduct in kids. And so that's what I was trying to avoid.
And I have heard that as well. However, and I had heard kind of the horror stories too from the past about Walton. I will say I think Mr. Walton has done a phenomenal job there, and people that had kids there before and that have kids there under his leadership, it's been a completely different experience.
Interestingly, the principal of Walton Middle School is Mr. Walton.
Yeah.
And he is not the namesake of the middle school. All right, more comments coming in. This is from Emily. She says, the board knew this is a growth area, so they should have been planning all along, not waiting until May of this year to force a dramatic and inequitable change for one group of kids at the last minute. She says, I have heard that the city schools, which have upper and lower middle schools for a while, are actually planning to move 5th graders back to elementary school because they have not found it yet the best solution for children. She also adds, Emily, great comments today. My rising 4th grader is still learning virtually, and she has managed to get through it since March 2020 by reminding herself that she would eventually get to return to her school next year only to have the rug pulled out from under her and be told she won't know until July where she'll be when she finally gets to return to in-person learning. That is brutal. I am empathetic for your plight there, Emily and Brian. I want to throw this to you guys. How about the deadline of making this decision, and how the deadline of making this decision comes before the deadline of saying yay or nay to virtual learning? Am I saying that correctly?
So, we actually got an email yesterday talking about transportation for the fall. Well, how can we one, know if our kids are going to need the bus if we don't even know what school they're going to? But yes, the deadline to opt in or opt in for virtual learning, I believe, is June 11th. And I believe it's a binding commitment. Well, there are some families that would probably be able to opt in for another year of virtual rather than spend a year, as a fifth grader at Walton. But then they don't get the option of changing their decision if the fifth graders stay at Mountain View, which seems, again, inequitable all around for these kids.
What do you think?
I 100% agree. This is off topic, but we keep mentioning the word inequitable, and I think there's an entire community of students at Mountain View that are being left behind, and that tends to be the immigrant families.
Southwood families?
Yes.
Okay, explain why.
So these are primarily Hispanic-speaking families, and Kristen Claren's been doing a great job working with them. They were not even aware that this was a possibility. So when the board meeting happened last week, she was there in Southwood with the families, and there were children speaking. He spoke so eloquently, speaking that Mountain View is his family. So when these kids come, this is the first school, and they create a family at Mountain View. They create a family with the teachers and other students, primarily other students who are learning English for the first time. And now we want to take these students and ship them to Walton and somehow have the family scurry all of a sudden to find childcare when before last week there was no after-school childcare if they went to Walton. I think these are students, I'm already worried about my children being left behind, but these are the children that indisputably will be left behind if this change happens. And there's just no attempt that I'm aware of, except for Kristen Clarence going into that neighborhood, no attempt by the school board to address the issues.
Well, and Mountain View is, I think, famous for its language immersion program.
Absolutely.
And so you often hear the side of the native English speakers learning Spanish. The other side being native Spanish speakers learning English. So if they're moved to Walton, it's not going to be the same program. They're not going to get that same exposure that their peers, have had. And that's, a detriment to their learning and growth.
Travis, thoughts?
Agree with what's been said here. And also, it reminds me of what we've dealt with all through this pandemic. This has kind of been the school board's MO on making parents decide preemptively on these, very big life changes. Do you send your kids back in person? And you've got to make that decision with very little to go on in terms of answers on what this is going to look like. And here we are once again. We don't know if it's going to be Walton, what that school day is going to look like. I mean, there's impacts to the kids, there's impacts to the families, people have to work, all these sorts of things. And then to say that, you got to decide before we even decide what the facts are, it's very difficult for parents.
Johnny Ornalis is watching. He owns the Guadalajara at Fry Springs and El Mariachi at Zion's Crossroads. Johnny, I think your wife is a teacher, right? Please correct me if I'm wrong. He says there needs to be strategy in thinking of the future and what is needed in the future and not just solving problems in the moment. Well said, Johnny. That's how you run your businesses. I would think that's totally true. This is coming in via Twitter. This is from Jonathan, and he's saying, can the roundtable offer perspective on extracurricular or after-school activities and how they could be impacted if this move does happen? Love your show, Jerry. Thank you for watching, Jonathan.
So, one of the things we have had clubs, after-school clubs in the past at Mountain View Elementary, either run by volunteers or run by teachers, and parents could opt into that. We have EDEP, which the kids that go to EDEP, the after-school program, love that program. And then there's also a teacher who runs a mountain bike club at Mountain View, and that's very popular as well. In addition, there's leadership opportunities at the 5th grade level to be like a 5th grade helper and to help out around the school and different things like that. And so these kids these 5th graders that are potentially moving to Walton next year won't get to participate in any of those things.
Katie Tower McDaniel says, I will say my son is a 7th grader at Walton right now, and he says it's totally fine, and he has never seen anyone get bullied there, which is encouraging to us moms. So thank you for that, Katie. We appreciate this. This is via Instagram. Jerry, please ask the roundtable about the communication methods utilized by the school board or the superintendent. It seems to me that's a problem that needs to be covered much greater than it is. You want to unpack that one? So what are they? What is she alluding to? The lack of communication? Is that the alluding?
There's been communication.
Okay, so there's no communication.
It's kind of it's a weird mix of like either getting a flood of emails that you can't keep track of, or no communication, or getting a text saying check your email for this whatever form, email, etc., and then not being able to you don't even get the email that they're texting you to say to look for. And then, I know that there have been families that have reached out to the school board, and I understand that being on the school board is probably a thankless task. I mean, and those people volunteer. We appreciate that so much because our community needs people who are passionate about education to do those things. But to get a response to an email that you have sent to the school board with concerns that's unsigned, that you don't know who it comes from, is unprofessional and disrespectful.
What do you think?
I mean, absolutely. To the point that I'm even here, I caught wind of this looking at the Facebook page for the PTO after they came off of that planning meeting a couple of weeks ago, and then come to find out that this is what's happening with the rising 5th graders. Then there was a Zoom that was supposed to be Q&A, which really wasn't Q&A, and a lot of angry parents about that. But my wife and I kind of saw the writing on the wall going into that and said, we need to understand what's going on, even though we don't have a rising 5th grader. This is a problem that affects the whole community and not just the rising 5th graders.
And I think that's a point that needs to be made. This can happen at any school in Albemarle County. We have an overcrowding issue, frankly, across the board in Albemarle because leadership has not considered infrastructure when approving housing development. Now, I want to say this. I don't think anyone on this roundtable, and I don't want to speak for the guests, is opposed to people buying homes or achieving the American dream or starting to build wealth and generational wealth through home ownership. We are not. No. I think the opposition, and I'll throw this to you, Letty, the opposition is approving development without infrastructure in place. And I'm going to tell you right now, 5th Street Extended is going to turn into a traffic snarl. I mean, you got obviously 5th Street Station, and when that shopping center gets back on market, as COVID is lightening up, you're going to see more of those empty storefronts in 5th Street Station filled. There's also a shopping plaza planned for across the Starbucks on 5th Street Extended that's going to come to market soon. So your thoughts on this topic in general?
I mean, I 100% agree that there needs to be some forethought and planning. And I'm not familiar with city planning, county planning, but it just seems that there has been no planning or thought process put into this. Rather, to me, from someone who's basically ignorant of planning cities, it just seems like, yes, we're going to approve these 2 new complexes because it's going to generate this much more money. But again, your point about the 5th Street, I live right off 5th Street, and just the traffic at 5th Street Station around, there's literally rush hour.
There is
traffic.
rush hour now.
Yeah.
Why, Paul goes to the Board of Supervisors and the County Planning Commission meetings.
Paul's her husband.
Right,
Yeah.
and I don't know that he's ever seen anyone from the school board attend any
That's
of
so
those
frustrating.
meetings. And I know they've said that they fill out a form or something, but, I mean, how many, I have a pile of paperwork, all the time that looks like this. I'm sure that the Board of Supervisors has the same. Why are the Board of Supervisors and the school board not sitting down on a regular basis to meet and talk about these issues together?
Well, you or an outgoing person. You take life clearly by the horns, and you make things happen. I can already tell that. Have you reached out to Supervisor Donna Price?
Paul has.
Okay, and the response, was there any?
He would be better. I don't want to speak for him
Okay,
because
okay.
he would probably, I'm sure he can type it.
Yeah, Paul, if you could offer some perspective on that, Paul. We see you're watching. Did Supervisor Price offer any perspective? If you could share that. All right, so this is coming in, and this is coming in via straight text message from Bruce, who's watching the show. It says, I'm listening to your show, Jerry, while driving to Northern Virginia. Can you ask the roundtable if they're considering private schools if this does come to fruition?
So yes, I considered moving my children to private school in the fall, to the Charlottesville Catholic School. However, I offered the decision to them, and they said this was prior to the fact of us knowing about the switch to Walton, or even to my oldest going to Walton, and they decided against going. They just really wanted to stay at Mountain View, and I respect their decision.
So will you force their hand this fall?
No,
You will not?
no, I want to force the people to keep.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to force.
You'll appreciate this from a Redfield neighbor. This is from Bob Yarborough. Bob Yarborough is great people. He says he's looking for your cat right now.
Yes, my cat's missing.
Yeah, help find Letty's cat. Missing somewhere in Redfields. Redfields unite. Bob says, although I no longer have children in Albemarle County schools, issues like this resonate with us all. We are a community. Thank you for this forum, and thank you to the parents for leading the charge. Also, Letty, we are all looking for your cat right now. The private school topic for you guys. Thoughts on that one?
I think all options are on the table.
Yeah.
I'm in a situation where our daughter has been all virtual all year because we weren't comfortable going back into the school, and that enters into it for many parents as well. I know from talking with my wife, private schools, some of them
They're
are not
turning people away.
accepting new
Yeah.
enrollees.
Yeah, Stab has no more room. Covenant Elementary, the lower school at Covenant, only has openings in third grade. So the value proposition for private school is quite high now because a lot of the private schools had in-person learning throughout the pandemic. So their enrollment numbers are at all-time high. We have a response from Paul. First, he says you should run for the school board. Are you considering doing that?
Paul keeps
You have a lot on your plate.
volunteering me.
Yeah. Okay, so is that a yes? You're going to run for the school board?
I don't know.
To be determined.
Yes.
Okay. He says Albemarle County Supervisor Donna Price pretty much passed the buck to the school board and said it was in the purview of the school board. Also, she used the fact that there is a planned expansion as a solution. Can we talk about the planned expansion? And then folks are asking on LinkedIn and via direct message, I love how dynamic this platform is, about the land that the county owns that could be an additional resource for a new school.
Can I just say one more thing about
Sure.
the private school real quick?
Sure.
So, I mean, definitely that topic has come up in our house, and, we have a Mountain View moms thread that, that's come up a lot in that. But I think for a lot of people in our community love the Mountain View community. But when you look at the people who can afford private school,
Yeah.
and then the part of our community that can't, going back to that equity issue, that's just furthering the educational divide and the achievement gap between, the people in our community, in our area.
Yeah, she's basically saying, and I'll cut to the chase here, it's not equitable with kids and children, with parents who have resources. They can learn in person, and parents that don't have the resources economically, their kids have to learn either virtually in the coat closet or have to go to middle school when they should be in elementary school. right? I mean, that's pretty safe to say, right?
Yeah.
And we've already seen how those differences bear out with virtual learning through the pandemic.
Yeah.
Emily says, because of the late notice, many parents cannot consider private schools because many of them are no longer accepting new students. It's a very valid point there, Emily. The land, folks are asking about the land that the county owns.
So it's my understanding that years ago, the county, the Albemarle County Public Schools bought a huge parcel of land behind the fire department off of Mill Creek that they've been sitting on. There's been talks about building like an alternative high school space there or another middle school there. I've never heard them talk about building an elementary school there. I could be wrong, though. I want to be upfront about that. But they're kind of just, and I'm sure there are many things I don't understand about budgeting and finances and whatever at that level. But why are they sitting on this land? They tore down Yancey. They expanded Red Hill. Scottsville got an expansion, I believe. But poor Mountain View is just floating in the breeze like, nothing happening.
Folks are asking here, guys, it sounds like a redistricting is waiting to happen in the school district. Is that a safe statement? Redistricting is one of those words that I don't think many folks like to hear. I think if we redistrict, I would love to see it in a way where students could be grandfathered into their current track or curriculum so they could stay with their friends.
Yeah.
I mean, good night. This has been hard enough on kids. Redistricting, you want to go down that road?
Well, that is an honest concern of mine, and I think it's impending. So my oldest, who's a fifth at Walton right now, is going to go to Burley in the fall. However, during one of the meetings, I think it was 2 weeks ago, cat was kind of let out of the bag that with this transition of fifth graders to Walton, I don't know, secretly, or the proposition was that this could be a permanent move. So that would mean...
Your kid's permanently at Walton? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So that's redistricting.
Exactly. And so then that's one middle schooler at Burley, which is 2 blocks from my work, and then another one at Walton. Logistically, as a single mom, I can't make that happen. And I'm not, having, like to your point, we're having a 10-year-old, or maybe it was your point, riding the bus by themselves. I leave for work at 8, and he's not the most reliable kid. So
he's 10 years old. Yeah.
He's going to want to watch YouTube.
When do you, thank goodness for YouTube sometimes. I have a 3-year-old and sometimes YouTube is the same. Yeah, right. Throw this to you. When would you feel comfortable, all you guys, when would you feel comfortable, and I want to learn this as a dad, and I'm sure my wife is watching is wondering the same. When do you feel comfortable with your child going to a bus stop alone? Getting on the bus stop alone, getting off the bus stop alone, and walking to your house alone.
Yeah.
I think that honestly depends
on the kid.
On the kid, like my oldest, yes, for 6th grade, he'll be fine.
Because Redfields is super safe.
Right. Yeah.
And
So
there's
it
a lot of
depends
people
where
that
you
have your back in Redfields.
Right. Find Dash, my cat.
Yeah, get the cat. Dash is the cat. Find Dash, Redfields. We need Dash. Probably hovering by the pool right now, Bob Yarborough. How about you? When would you feel comfortable? So you're a protective dad.
Yeah, and it's hard to say because, my 9-year-old, she doesn't stay at home by herself yet. But to your point about Redfields as a safe neighborhood, it is, except for the fact that there's no sidewalks and people fly along the roads in their cars. So I don't feel exceptionally safe about sending her down there on her own right now. 10, 11, I don't know.
There was just a case in Florida where someone tried to
abduct
an 11-year-old girl from a bus stop.
She fought him off.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
that gave you pause.
Yes. I mean, and I think, we live in a small community, so I know that within our neighborhood there would be other kids also walking to the bus. But again, I think Letty was right. It depends on the kid. And I think it depends on where you live. Do I want my 10-year-old or 11-year-old getting off the bus and walking home by herself and letting herself in the door every day? No, not really. And
I realize that for some families, that's not an option. Their kids have to learn early to get on the bus. They have to be
resourceful.
Yeah, forget what the key latch kids.
Latchkey
kids.
latchkey.
What's a latchkey kid?
So it's how my generation grew up, where we would, like come home by ourselves after school every
Yeah.
day, let ourselves in with a key, hang out till our parents got home from work.
Yeah.
Vanessa Parkhill's watching. My kids are in their 20s. I'm thinking maybe you would never get comfortable having your kid get on the bus alone. I love my kids, she says.
Yeah.
Vanessa Parkhill, you got great kids. I know your son. All right, so this question that's coming in now, who's to blame? I mean, and in 2021, I think it's because of social media. We just want to point fingers. I don't think you guys want to point fingers necessarily. You guys just want a solution. You guys love the school, and you said it so best in one of your quotes for that media parade that you did last week. You said, "We're fighting so hard because we love Mountain View so much."
Exactly.
Can you put that in perspective?
Yeah, and I'm sure everyone, I would imagine, loves their elementary school. It's a special time. It's a special experience. But Mountain View just has an amazing group of teachers, an amazing group of admins, amazing staff. A lot of people have been there a long time. It's just our focus, like the PTO's focus, isn't necessarily on fundraising, but on community building. And so it's such a great place. I feel, wholly comfortable sending my kids there every day. I know they're loved and cared for and nurtured and well taken care of when they're there. And I don't want to give that up before we have to.
Ashley Hermandorena is giving you some props right now. Eleanor Davis is giving you props right now. Megan Kennedy, Catherine Taylor, all giving you props right now. Jamie Waller giving you props. Rochelle Padilla, and Taryn is loving what she's seeing. Any comments? Put them in the feed. I got more comments coming in over here. Sharon makes this comment: asking kids who can barely tell time to get themselves on a bus unsupervised is a recipe for disaster.
It's not going to happen with my 10-year-old.
Really?
I mean, I think it would involve constant texting and me calling and watching on the Nest camera he doesn't know exists.
Well, I'll throw this to you. So you have a unique perspective here because you have one that's doing this right now. So did your oldest, what were the positive and cons that you saw? Besides the delayed day. That's an obvious con.
Right.
Others.
So at Walton, they're just, as fifth graders, they're their own pod. And I do agree with your point that they are busting their butts to try to make this as positive an experience. And I think in general, we're just putting out fires at this point, which with proper preparation, we wouldn't be put in this position. But positive is his teacher experience. Like if he could have Ms. Morris every year for the rest of his life, I'd be quite happy. So she's an awesome teacher. The negatives beyond the delay is like recess. He's bored, and recess is their time to burn energy.
And
These
kids need
to
active play.
run.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just walk laps around the track.
Yeah.
And granted, in his class right now, there are 4 students, so there's not that much interaction. But then you isolate those fifth graders as a whole from the rest of the school with improper equipment for them to
After they've been
exert
isolated
themselves.
for a year at home.
So that's physical stress. It's just created more anxiety for him.
Right. And another piece is that, going back to how close our school community is, you also have these fifth grade teachers that have been removed from the school that they love working at and told, okay, now you're a middle school teacher.
Kelly Jackson is watching. She has 2 daughters. She says right now that extra land will be built to house all of the STEAM academies under one roof. But she says, but who knows what will really be built there. And she says, I would not feel happy about my 11 to 12-year-old girl riding the bus with 14 to 15-year-old boys. That's a legitimate comment there. Thoughts on the bus idea? 5th graders riding with 8th graders potentially.
Yeah, absolutely scary, just as you described there. And the other part of this is with the school day starting later. I mean, let's not forget that parents they've got to go to work, so you're potentially having the kids at home for hours before they even get on the bus. And I've heard these
Yep.
horror stories about, 2-hour long bus rides just to get to school. So, it's a problem any way you slice it.
How do you think this is going to play out, guys? I mean, you guys are as like galvanized and as organized and as vocal as I've ever seen anything, really education-wise in Albemarle County. I started at a UVA at the Daily Progress, worked for NBC 29 and Monticello Media before launching this business. Follow this stuff closely, and a lot of this is also the positive of social media, helping you guys organize and galvanize. What is the expectation? What is the hope that will come out of this?
I think my hope is that the school board will take a pause and that they will say, our kids were at Mountain View a couple years ago when they had 770 kids there, way more than are projected for the fall. And they don't even have the numbers yet for how many kids are going to go virtual, how many kids are going to move to private school, whatever. They still got art. They still had an art classroom. They still had a music room. The school board's saying, well, your kids all those things are going to go away if we do this. Well, that's not true because we were there when they had a large population a couple years ago, and they still had all the good things. Our kids didn't even notice that there was anything, different about the school. I mean, kids are kids. They play with their friends. They love their teachers. They're happy, they're happy to be there. They have lunch in the cafeteria, whatever. I would like the school board to say, we aren't going to move the fifth graders this year, but let's have a committee of parents, to look at these long-term problems. And I know they have a long-range planning committee, which, I'm thankful for those volunteers as well, but let's have this is our problem, these are the solutions, these are our plans to execute them, instead of just constant chatter, and nothing gets done.
What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. To piggyback off of what Jen is saying here, I mean, long range, absolutely. There needs to be some sort of strategy developed around what are we going to do going forward. Yes, this is a problem now, but it's not going away either. So we need to build some consensus across the board, not just decisions coming down from above. And then you've got, very unhappy folks and families, the kids, parents, and so on, that have to deal with the fallout of that. In the immediate, I know that we just heard yesterday that there's going to be this planning committee of sorts assembled within the Mountain View School.
I can add to that. I got an email from Dr. Matt Haas, the superintendent of Albemarle County Schools, because of this roundtable. And he says, "Dear Jerry, please feel free to use this email address when you need immediate response from me. There's some news being made on your subject tomorrow, and perhaps there will be an opportunity for a follow-up appearance by the Mountain View principal on your show. In general, a community working group is being convened, which will include parents, teachers, school staff, and community members to review various options and to make a recommendation to me. Dr. Matthew Haas, Superintendent." Thoughts on the email and whether or not it is actual, like this group, and whether that group can yield actual results, or if this could be potentially smoke and mirrors to manage perception?
I think that's what we've been fighting, is smoke and mirrors. And to answer your question, what I want is an honest and frank discussion about our options. The 2 Zoom meetings we've had, parents have proposed options, alternatives, and they're just either neglected or immediately shot down. And so an honest and frank discussion with the board and this committee, for which I've already volunteered to be on, I think is what I'm hopeful for. I think complete exhaustion of all of our options beyond moving the 5th graders to Walton is what I hope for, but that's not what I've seen so far.
And, unfortunately, our experiences personally with these committees have been parents and admins from the school devoting months and months and months of their time in these discussions, and then the school board doing what they want anyway.
My hope is we don't have months and months of time now. So,
Yeah.
So when are the meetings happening via Zoom? Like what time of the day? When?
It's usually in the evening, like 6 or 7, and it's
Okay.
usually like we're told maybe like, correct me if I'm wrong, like 3 or 4 hours before it happens.
I mean, I have like, I'm going to throw this out here. I have like kind of an issue with that method of communication because not everyone has access to Zoom.
Correct.
That's a major
access to
problem.
internet at home.
Correct.
Especially like internet that can sustain.
It's also not
video
everyone is
conferencing.
home from work by then.
that time.
It's dinner time for
Exactly.
your kids. You're trying to get your kids ready for bed. So now you have to choose, like, do I feed my kids or do I go to this Zoom meeting? But like you said,
What happens if they don't have legitimate internet
that's
to
right.
have the Zoom?
And there
That's-
are a lot of families in Albemarle County that don't have internet that need to be involved and have a voice in these meetings.
Amen. Amen. Vanessa Parkhill, putting kids of any age on a school bus for more than an hour is not an acceptable option. Albemarle County public school students and their families deserve better solutions than an hour-plus bus ride. Wow, the comments are coming in. How about this one? What does the panel think of the kids going to Walton, but on an elementary school schedule? If the county cannot figure out how to keep the kids at Mountain View, maybe they bring an elementary schedule to Walton.
I would say that's probably an improvement.
That was one of the options
Yeah.
that we proposed when we met previously was, if they have to move because of space, why can't they come back early and have specials or have recess time or have, just time with their friends and then go to the EDEP after school program?
That seems reasonable to me here.
Yeah, I mean, I get that it's a logistical nightmare for buses, but
Right.
if you're gonna,
But if they're going to have extra bus routes to
Exactly.
take kids from Walton to Fifth Street, which is not on the current transportation schedule,
yeah.
I mean,
Amy Johnston, planning that engages parents and families, please. There's been flat out no response to solutions presented at the 2 meetings thus far. Amy Johnston, thank you for that comment. Other perspective is coming in here. How many of you guys are considering moving if this happens? This question is
Oh,
being
that's not
asked.
an option for
Not
me.
an option?
we love our neighborhood
Yeah.
too much. I mean, we have stayed purposefully in our neighborhood because we want our kids at Mountain View.
Kelly, why can't they bring in classroom trailers until a better solution can be found? Have you gotten a legitimate answer to this?
So when that was proposed, what they threw back at us was the whole sightline thing, and one parent solution
No
was
space.
at a window.
Yeah,
No
tell
really.
the sightline thing. It seems so ridiculous.
So
This-
if the elementary school is kind of uphill from where the soccer field where they put the trailer, so they're assuming it's not even 100 yards, but they're assuming that walk from the trailer to say PE class, those kids won't be visible, but there's windows facing that field, and just flip the trailer around or add a window and it's visible.
And
then
they
you're-
have walkie-talkies.
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, my kid walks,
And
it's better than
other
riding the bus
piece is
alone.
There's
Right?
there's
Or-
not windows in the front of the school, so when they had trailers in the bus loop,
Exactly.
they couldn't see the kids from the front of the school.
So that's a bogus excuse.
And they also throw at us, well, it costs $400,000 for a trailer. They've made it happen before. They made it work 2 years ago.
$400,000 for a trailer?
That's what they quoted in the meeting.
Good night. That's a problem right there.
Yeah.
What do you want to add here?
I was just going to add, can an administrator not walk the children back and forth?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Or
I would-
volunteer if that means my kid doesn't have to go to Walton.
wouldn't we rather have the kids on an elementary school grounds than riding a bus and going to a bus stop alone? I mean, that just seems like common sense. Johnny adds, we don't have enough school bus drivers right now.
That has been a problem within the county as well, historically.
Yeah, and he says summer school is already suffering because of all this. All right, so we're about 58 minutes in. I do not think we're going to be able to get to all these comments, although I very much appreciate them coming in. I do want to save room for a final word for all you guys. So if you want to think about what you're going to have to say, I will acknowledge some of these comments first. Jenny Weinberg is watching. She says, I taught at Mountain View when it was still Kale and taught in a trailer for 4 years. It is 100% possible. That's from a teacher. Sharon says, hire a TA to help. Yeah, a TA's got to be less than a $400,000 trailer, right? Sharon, Then the news reported that of 700 families at Mountain View, only 50 came to the Zoom meeting. So obviously people are fine with it.
No.
It's totally an inaccurate fact.
There's
she
not
said.
700 fifth graders.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, why would a kindergarten parent or a first grade parent, which didn't even get the email about the Zoom probably in the
he
first
would be
place.
on the Zoom though. He would be
I saw it on the
Zoom.
PTO page.
Yeah, I saw it on Facebook.
I mean,
Yeah.
but why, I mean, that makes no sense.
It's
that makes no
that
sense.
comment just
Ignorance.
ignites me because you're excluding the people who don't have internet. There was no.
Yeah.
I didn't hear any translation of that meeting into Spanish, and there was no inclusion
Stop
of
it.
this. I think they might have been. I just probably didn't access it.
So yeah, I think
Dude, that would really irritate the hell out of me.
typically they do have an interpreter there, and there is like a thing on the bottom that they have to click on to then have like the interpretation
Right. But that's also assuming that these people have access, like
or have
that-
gotten the email.
or have Zoom.
Yeah.
Murav Frazier, the buddy system. Use the buddy system. Yeah, I remember the buddy system. Ingrid Shalita, is that Ingrid says, if they are asking for the bus situation, why not the learning cottage option? Katie says, hire someone to watch the kids during their walk if needed.
Yeah.
All this stuff sounds like absolute common sense. Does it not?
Yes.
I mean, as parents, I feel like we have to use just basic common sense to keep these kids alive. I mean, frankly speaking, you guys have a lot more experience than I do. My kid's 3, and I do not miss the stage where you would hold him in your arms, and if you turn the wrong way, his head could fall off. Now he's like a little bit more durable and sturdy, which Dad likes. All right, so we should go down the final word route. Why don't we go Jen, Travis, and Letty here? As long as you want, the show is yours.
Yeah, so, I just want to give a huge round of applause and thank you to the Mountain View teachers and the admins and the staff that have worked so tirelessly this past year and a half to make sure that our kids have still felt cared for and loved and nurtured as much as possible in an impossible situation. I hope they know how much the parents of Mountain View and the kids appreciate everything that they've done for us. And I truly, truly, truly hope that our kids get to finish their elementary school experience at an elementary school and are not forced to grow up before they're ready.
Okay, so this is a good one that's come in. Then we'll go final words here. Grace says, please ask the panel to explain the advantage of being a 5th grader at Mountain View. They are the kings and queens of the school.
Yeah.
I mean, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Mountain View 5th graders, do they do the tour with the new students in previous time?
I don't, well, you might be able to answer that.
I've heard they've done tours or they
They're
welcome in
5th
new
grade.
students.
Yeah.
They're 5th grade helpers.
Right.
They get to do volunteer stuff around the school. That's a thing they have to apply and be selected for, that kids look forward to doing. So,
What do you think, Travis? How about a final word?
Final word, I would, say specifically to our leaders, the administration, the school board, just listen. You have very passionate parents within the school district, school administrators, teachers. They all have opinions. They all have ideas. And we all want to work together to come up with the best possible solution for these children. Try and put yourself in the shoes of these parents, teachers, administrators. If you had a rising 5th grader, what would you want to be done here? So, really engage the situation and listen to what those folks have to say.
and also put yourself in the shoes of the kids.
Yeah, well said. I mean, that's how I see it, man. My kid's 3, we don't even go to this school. But I'm thinking about it like you said, like if my better 7/8, my wife, you're watching, I love you, sweetheart. If this was happening to her, dude, you do not mess with Mama Bear when it comes to Baby Bear. I mean, she would be like at Matt Haas's office, like camped out outside, banging on. Literally, I'm confident my wife would be doing that. So I'm like trying to put myself. I guess that's empathy. And you're talking about empathy here. So very well said. You get to close us down.
So I think we're all very grateful for all the work that's been done, and I can't even fathom the amount of work and frustration that the board has been, and the pressure that they've been put under this past year. But I think what we need is for families to be included. I think for kids to be considered and not just a quick fix. This is a quick fix, yes, for this year, but the lasting effects it will have on my two sons as they fall further and further behind, both academically because of the pandemic and then socially because they've been forced to mature way too early. That's what concerns me. And we have the means that other families don't have. So if I'm concerned, I think about other families that don't have access to these Zoom meetings or rely on EDEP, and they're just not given that opportunity. And I'm very concerned for them as well.
Well said. We'll get you out of here on this with some props and praise from your peers. Vanessa, thank you to the guests for taking the time out of their day to advocate for their children and the children of other parents at Mountain View. Emily, thank you all for advocating for our kids. Grace, thank you to the panel for standing up for all of us. Laura, this panel deserves props. Thank you for taking the time for standing up for us. I mean, it could continue. This is from Lauren. She says, the panel is fantastic. Please pass along our thanks. Jerry, thank you for having this panel. I did not know of this issue. The parents are strong, courageous. Thank you for standing up for us. Guys, I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, stand up. Get the voice heard. It's amazing what happens when people rally together and make their voices heard. Truly power in numbers. And I'll close the show by saying this. Imagine if this was happening at Meriwether Lewis Elementary School. Would this even happen at Meriwether Lewis Elementary School? So if you're a parent of any elementary school in Albemarle County, heck, any elementary school in Central Virginia, you should be mindful if this is a beta test that's waiting to be rolled out across any school system. And secondly, be empathetic for the plight of these parents, because frankly, it could happen to all of us. That's the show. It's the I Love CVille show. Thank you for joining us on a Thursday afternoon. We will see you tomorrow at 10:15 a.m. Take care. Nicely done.
When you said stand up, I was like,
I was ready to go too.
And it's not happening at Brownsville. Brownsville's